On the evening of April the 7th, 2013, Scott Sunford contacted the Yakima County Sheriff's Office to report that his home alarm had been triggered while he was out of town, and he had been unable to contact his wife Desiree ever since.
Sheriff's Office.
Hi, ma'am. This is Scott Sunford. Today at 324, 327, and 328, I had 3 census trips, and I've been out of town with family for a funeral. My wife was home.
Okay.
I just got home, and the board that I have over my back door has been broken. So somebody has forced their way in, and I haven't heard back from my wife. I need an officer here now.
Okay. And what's your wife's name?
Desiree Sunford.
Before we begin, we would like to send out our sincere condolences to the friends and family of Desiree Sunford, whose life was taken so cruelly. Desiree and Scott Sunford had been happily married since 2003. From all appearances, they seemed to be the perfect couple. Desiree was a dedicated art teacher and Scott was in the National Guard. The couple shared a love of the outdoors and would often go cycling together as one of their favorite activities. But cracks in this perfect relationship would only begin to show after this fateful night when Desiree would be brutally murdered. When police arrived at the Sunfords' house after receiving Scott's call, they were surprised to find Scott standing outside with a gun and a spotlight, both of which were aimed at his house.
When I rolled up to the residence, I saw somebody had their spotlight on the house, and he had a pistol drawn. That person was later identified as Scott Sunford. And I asked him what was going on. Why didn't you go in? He said, I don't know what's in there. Which is a very odd answer to give.
When the officers entered the house, they saw nothing odd at first. But that would all change when they entered the master bedroom where they would discover the body of Desiree Sunford. She had been shot 9 times, and police discovered the bullet casings around the room. Judging by the way the body was positioned when it was discovered, it looked like Desiree had attempted unsuccessfully to crawl away from her attacker in her final moments. Responding officers immediately noticed that Scott was not having the typical reaction one might expect when someone finds out about their wife's murder. And since this was now a murder investigation, the first thing investigators wanted to do was interview Scott, suspecting that he might have had something to do with his wife's murder.
At that point, when I had exited the house and walked over to Mr. Sunford and told him that there was a deceased woman in the house, we believe it's your wife. I remember telling him, I'm terribly sorry. I'm terribly sorry. He had a stone cold look on his face. It seemed like it meant nothing to him. And I told this to the detectives when they arrived on scene. I think this guy knows something about this. Either he did it, or he knew who did.
Only hours after discovering the body of Desiree Sunford, police had Scott in an interrogation room, questioning him about his story and the events of that night. Scott told investigators that he had been out of town at a funeral while his wife was back at their house. He had stayed overnight with his friend Paige and was coming back home when he got the alert indicating that his home security alarm system had been triggered. When he didn't receive a call from Desiree, who was supposed to be home in response to the alarm, he was concerned for her safety, and that was why he dialed 911. But when Scott arrived at the house before the police and saw that his home had been broken into and that Desiree's car was still in the driveway, he knew something had to be wrong. But still, he didn't go inside.
I stayed there. I kept waiting. I couldn't go in. I didn't know what the hell to do. So I backed the car up a ways and got on the phone. And I called my friend Brian that lives out in Glebe.
Investigators wanted to know why Scott had refused to go in the house if he thought his wife might be in trouble, considering his military training and combat experience.
You did 2 tours in combat areas?
Yeah.
Okay. What areas of the world were you in?
Iraq, Germany, Kuwait. That's about it.
Was all the combat in Iraq?
Yeah.
When you got out there, but it sounds like by the time you actually made it to the house, you were pretty frantic. Like, you felt like something had gone wrong.
My stomach was churning. I was shaking. I had convinced myself by that point something had to be wrong.
Okay, and so why not go in the house and check things out and make sure she's okay?
Because I was afraid.
Well, I'm just thinking, you're a big guy. You're what, 6'4"?
Somewhere up there.
6'4", 250. You've got a firearm on you. You've been in combat. I mean, you've done some serious shit that most people will never do. So if anyone's going to be willing to go charging in the house and make sure their wife's okay, it would seem to me that it would be you.
Scott never gave the investigators a reason as to why he refused to go into the house to check on Desiree. So the investigator changed his line of questioning to inquire about Scott's whereabouts on the night that he was away for that funeral.
Then you stayed at your dad's in Kennewick?
No, I actually stayed with a friend, but let's see.
What's the friend's name?
Oh, her name's Paige. She's a mutual friend.
Paige was a name that the investigators were familiar with by this point in the investigation, and Scott would soon reveal this couple's relationship with this woman was a complicated one.
Did Desiree know that you were going to Paige's?
I don't know, honestly.
It's not something you had discussed with her?
No.
Was it just a platonic friendship, or did you have a sexual relationship with Paige?
You know, I shouldn't go there because it's kind of rude, but well, Des didn't want me to say anything to anybody, but she kind of had mixed feelings, and if I'll do anything, but that's one thing I can't provide for her. So at one point, her and Paige had a little thing going for a while there, a little experiment.
Okay, so it was Desiree and Paige who had the sexual relationship?
Yeah.
But not you and Paige? Or
we all did.
Sometimes you and Paige too?
Honestly, we all did.
Okay.
Giving him an alibi. With no evidence to hold Scott on, police were forced to let him go, now turning their attention to Paige to see if she could provide them with more information that would lead to Desiree's killer. But Paige confirmed Scott's alibi and gave the police a similar story to the one Scott had given them. And Scott's phone records didn't show him near the murder scene at the time of the death. So, with no more evidence to go on, the case seemed to go cold for more than a year, when out of the blue, the police would receive a mysterious phone call from an anonymous caller saying that they knew who killed Desiree Sunford. The caller tells the police that the killer was a man by the name of Marty Grismer, which was a name that had not come up yet in the investigation. At first, police didn't believe the caller's tip to be credible, but after further investigation, they discovered that the anonymous tip had actually come from Paige herself. Investigators brought Paige in for questioning and to ask her about what she knew.
Marty was my best friend for a long time.
Paige told investigators that Marty was a friend of hers who took very good care of her. Marty was in love with Paige, never hesitating to tell her that she was perfect and beautiful and that he would do anything for her. But Paige looked at Marty as nothing more than a close friend, and after going out with Marty one time and deciding it was a bad idea, Paige told Marty that she only wanted to be friends and had no interest in a romantic relationship with him. Then, only 3 weeks before Desiree's death, Paige would find out that she was pregnant with Scott's baby. As soon as she found out, one of the first people she would tell the good news to was her friend, Marty.
Apparently, he decided that if the baby was Scott's like it was supposed to be, then Desiree would cause issues.
Paige went on to tell the detective that Marty had been the one who had killed Desiree in order to get her out of the way for Paige, who was pregnant with Scott's baby. And what made her testimony all the more convincing was the fact that she was able to describe Desiree's murder scene in very specific detail.
I never told him where the key was hidden. He said it took him probably 15 minutes to find it. He got the key. He went in the front door because he knew that that was the closest to the bedroom. The alarm went off when he opened the door. And Ada came out barking. Des came out right behind her, and he shot her. He shot her 3 times. And she went down. He shot her some more. I don't remember how many bullets he said. It was a full clip.
But even with Paige's testimony, there was not hard evidence linking Marty to Desiree's murder. Investigators' first plan was to give Paige a wire to see if she could get Marty to admit to the crime on tape. But unfortunately, Marty wouldn't take the bait. However, it would not be long before police would finally uncover the smoking gun that would break this case wide open. That smoking gun came in the form of a tip from Marty's employer. Marty had been dismissed from duty because his managers had discovered a bag of gun parts in his office. Among these gun parts was a barrel that would later be confirmed as the same barrel from the gun that had killed Desiree. With new evidence in hand, the police decided it was time to bring Marty in for questioning. At first, while talking to investigators, Marty tried to insinuate that Paige was the one who had killed Desiree after borrowing his gun and car, and said she was trying to set him up, framing him for a murder that she had committed. But Marty didn't know about the forensic evidence against him.
You work at Basic American Foods, and so does Paige. And as I was doing my research, trying to figure out who you are or where you'd be, where I could contact you, I called down there and talked to Basic American Foods, and they said that you were suspended from work for having gun parts at work. Okay, tell me about that. What kind of gun parts are we talking about?
I had a gun barrel that I left though.
A gun barrel?
Yeah.
Did you have this barrel last May during the period when Desiree was shot?
Last May.
April?
I don't believe so.
April 2013, just to be clear.
I don't believe I had any pistol barrels in my possession at that time, no, besides what was in my gun.
Where it gets even worse for you is this gun barrel that we've been talking about. That's the gun barrel that was in the gun that killed Desiree Sunford. I've already retrieved that gun barrel from Basic American Foods, and I've already had the ballistic analysis done on it. And the slugs that were pulled from Desiree's body came from that gun.
Marty never confessed to the murder of Desiree Sunford, but he did admit that the evidence the prosecution had against him would likely be enough to convict him of murder. So in exchange for a lighter sentence, Marty Grismer entered an Alford plea to avoid jail. After entering the plea, Marty Grismer was sentenced to 15 years in prison and is scheduled to be released in 2028. Many still suspect that Scott, Paige, or perhaps both of them may have had something to do with the planning of Desiree's murder, and to this day, Marty maintains his innocence. But no other charges have ever been filed due to insufficient evidence. Do you think Scott or Paige had anything to do with the planning and murder of Desiree Sunford? Or was Marty solely to blame? If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like the video, comment down below with your take on it, and please subscribe to the channel. On your way out, don't forget to hit the notification bell in order to stay up to date each time we reveal a new shocking case. Until next time, stay safe and keep your eyes peeled. You never know what's lurking in the shadows.